Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. Going to have a look at the weather next week to 10 days in today's video. It's going to take us to around the middle of September, so we're going to be going into the middle of the month with this update. Looks like we're starting to get these sort of changeable type conditions that you would expect with autumn coming on. We're going to have a couple of days of pretty quite warm weather through the middle part of this week, but later in the week it's going to change and we're going to get some rain coming through, some cooler air for a time, then maybe a push of warmer air, and maybe another change to cooler air. So we're going into a more changeable period, I think, now. And this is typical of autumn, of course. It's an alternating season, or a transitional season, where you go from summer through to eventually you'll arrive at winter. And the change in air masses that takes place can be quite stark, quite dramatic on a day-by-day basis. We've got a little bit of that coming up over the next week to 10 days, I think. So I'll show you the detail in a second. Before I get on with that, just say about the ads. There's links to articles on all the pages. Have a browse widgets, click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. And thanks very much for doing that. This video adds to most pages which own that content. When you watch the close back up again, it does all help to pay for GazWebBiz.com. So we'll start off with the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts for the next week to 10 days. We've got the E70UF here on the top, and the GFS is on the bottom. We'll have a look at that in a second. 500 millibars, 80,000 feet. It's an area in the atmosphere, high pressure, low pressure are being moved around by a jet stream running above. But let's translate low pressure as red to high pressure. So this is the mean flow chart from the E70UF up to 10 days away, which is the middle of September. Got a trough at below average height. It's quite a deep trough to the north and west, and a ridge hanging on to the south and the southeast. So essentially you can look at this, that the ridge is trying to maintain summer. We had a lot of ridging from the Azores into Europe. That ridge is trying to keep summer going, but this trough is trying to introduce autumn via the Atlantic. And we're going to see an alternating pattern between sometimes the trough and autumnal conditions getting the ascendancy over the next week to 10 days. Sometimes it will be the ridge that pulls up warmer temperature, particularly to the southern part of the country. Eventually, of course, this is going to go one way. It is going to go to autumn. But this time of the year, very often you do get these alternating sort of air masses. The GFS is very similar, so again we've got this ridge down to south-southwest, maybe a bit stronger with the ridge if anything, but autumn waits up to the north, the west of the country, and the jet stream is doing something like that. So again, it implies quite a changeable pattern. Looking at the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles, as I say, we've got some warm weather coming up over the next couple of days. Tuesday, Wednesday, going to see quite hot temperatures actually down in the south. Could be at around 26, 27 degrees. It will be depending on how much sunshine comes through, of course. I think you're going to be plagued by cloud over the next couple of days. So that will limit the temperature potential, but if the sun comes out for any length of time, potentially it does get quite warm. Now, as we get through to the end of the week and the weekend, we've clearly got a cooling trend taking place, then going back towards the red line, which is the 30-year temperature average, of course. Now then into next week, we're sort of up and down, so that's a warmer push coming through there, that's a cooler push, and that's another bit of a warmer push just there, and then that's another cooler plunge down there. So clearly the air masses are alternating then as we're going through into next week. Some days are going to be quite warm, other days will be feeling fairly cool, particularly in the northern part of the country. It looks like it's turning into a more changeable phase as we go through to the end of the week, the weekend, and next week, and that's highlighted by the precipitation. So we've got some rain today, and that's on a warm front. That's introducing this warm and humid air we've got for the next couple of days. Then it goes dry for much of the rest of this week, but into the weekend and then on into next week, the rainfall spikes do come back. It's not a very wet spell, but certainly a more changeable period being highlighted over weekend and into next week. Also, the extended part also looks fairly changeable. That's into the second half of the month, and probably best to leave that alone, but it does look quite changeable as we go through to the end of the ensemble chart. Temperature anomalies for the next week are still holding up above average, so the 5th through to 13th of September generally holding up above average, not just for us, but for most parts of Europe as well. I would expect as we go through the week, these will edge more towards average, still possibly a little bit above average, but I would suspect these will cool a bit, these charts, over the next day. So we'll look at this again on Thursday, when I would have thought it's likely to be looking somewhat cooler than that chart is showing today. The precipitation anomaly generally quite dry down in the south and the east still, wet and average in the north and west, and as with the temperature anomalies over the next week, which I think will trend cooler, I think the precipitation anomaly will generally start to trend more unsettled, especially in the south and the southeast. Be interested to come back to these charts on Thursday and see what they're showing. So here's the GFS for Wednesday, for the middle part of the week, and we've got this warm area of high pressure still dominating across central parts of Europe, pulling the winds in from the south. Now, this was expected to go on for the whole of the week. Actually, it looks like this could be ended a little bit sooner than we anticipated. So on Thursday, low pressure is already coming in from the Atlantic. This could bring thunder to the north and west. I don't think it'll bring much way of thunder to the east, but by Thursday we're already cutting off that very warm southerly flow. So as we go through into Friday, we're already in a cooler west to southwesterly flow, and another weather system coming into the north and west. That possibly brings some very wet weather late Friday and into Saturday. So Saturday could start off on a really wet note for many parts of the country. And behind that, we're bringing in much cooler air from the northern part of the Atlantic. So here comes the first sort of push of autumn as we go through into the weekend. These are the upper air temperatures. I don't, not the upper air temperatures, the thickness lines. I don't often show you these, but essentially these coloured lines are indicating different air masses. So where we're behind this lemon coloured line, that essentially is summer. This green line just here is essentially behind that, where we've got autumn temperature setting in, and right at the very top over Greenland, this is winter. This blue line just here, when that blue line comes down into the UK over the winter, or in the winter, that's telling you that it's getting cold. It's the 5 to 8 line. It's one of the things that we look for to predict whether it's going to be cold enough for snow. There are many other things that are important to forecasting snow, but the thickness, the 5 to 8 line, is one of the things that we look for. Anyway, leaving that alone. So this lemon coloured line is summer, the green line is autumn, and on Tuesday, tomorrow, we're firmly in the lemon coloured line, so we're firmly in summer-like temperatures. But by Saturday, look at that, the lemon coloured line has gone down to Spain and Portugal, and the green line is through the UK. So it's going to be feeling a lot cooler on Saturday, to say the least. It will be feeling autumnal at that point. However, I don't think that lasts all that long. As we go through to Sunday, we start to push in warmer air from the southwest once again. Does look quite unsettled though, particularly to the north and west, where there could be a lot of heavy rain on Sunday through Scotland and Ireland. The ridge intensifies a bit down to the south of the country early next week. This is a week away, Monday 12th of September. So this is starting to pull in warmer air from the south once more. There's the thickness line showing that the lemon coloured line is back in as we go through to the start of next week, bringing summer-like temperatures, at least in terms of the upper air temperatures, back to the UK probably briefly. And then through the course of next week, we find that the ridge holds on close to the country on this particular run of the GFS. However, it is within a cooler air mass again. So at day 10 on Thursday 15th of September, have a look at the upper air temperatures. You can see that the lemon coloured line now, or the thickness line, has gone down back in Spain and Portugal, and the green or autumnal line, the 545 line, is lurking up to the north and the west of the country. So very much alternating air masses coming up over the next week to 10 days. Some days it will be feeling quite warm and summery, other days it will be feeling quite cool and autumnal, particularly so over the weekend. And it is indicative of the time of year where we transition from summer, and eventually we're going to arrive in autumn, but of course that won't be until later on in September, and then firmly into autumn by the time we get through to October. Finally, have a look at the ECWS. So as we go through to Friday, again, looks very unsettled. Low pressure is coming in off the Atlantic, ending what looked to be at one stage quite a prolonged warm spell this week. It's going to wane quicker than was expected. Over weekend, it looks unsettled. Saturday, this looks wet and windy at midnight on Saturday. I think there'll be some heavy rain moving through the country then. We're into a much cooler, showery flow on Sunday. This next area of low pressure is waiting in the Atlantic. That pushes through to the north and west of the country. It's quite a deep Atlantic storm, actually. On Monday, that brings the risk of gales to western parts of Scotland, also lots of heavy rain for them. Further south, we're closer to the ridge, so it should be drier and starting to turn a bit warmer again after a cool weekend down in the south of the country. Changeable conditions continue into Tuesday next week with probably a weather front strung out here. That's quite interesting. There's a weather front doing something like that. So that could bring pulses of rain through the central swathe of the country early next week. And it will divide the country from fairly warm temperatures, just about clinging on in the south, to pretty cool and autumnal air up in the north. We are transitioning into a changeable and slightly more autumnal type setup. The middle part of next week, again, summer trying to cling on across many parts of Europe, and it's still just about hanging on in the south. But low pressure is out to the north and west, and this is very much on a knife edge, really, between warm conditions that are still trying to hang on from the south, and these autumnal and unsettled conditions that are trying to come in from the north and from the northwest of the country. As I say, eventually this is going to only go one way, and that will be to autumn. Of course, we will lose those summer temperatures and will slide definitively into autumn. But for the next week to 10 days, we're going to be alternating between some days being quite warm and quite summery, particularly so for the south, and some days being really quite cool and autumnal, and that's particularly so for the north and west, although over weekend, even in the south, I think we will get a swipe of autumnal type temperatures. So very gradually we're inching towards autumn. It's always a fairly slow process, especially down in the south of the country, but we're slowly moving in that direction. We'll have a look at the weather for the next month tomorrow, CFSV2, so come back for that. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.